Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Millennial Smark, and I'm back at it again with another video. Got some news brewing. Let's get directly into it, and I'll give my opinions directly afterwards. So, link is down in the description box below. This is coming from Cage Side Seats, or SB Nation. Malakai Black finishing up with AEW. The January 8th AEW Dynamite opened with a match between Will Ospreay and Buddy Matthews. Ospreay, unsurprisingly, won an unsurprisingly good match. The aftermath was surprising, however. Not only did it not follow the usual House of Black formula by having Malakai Black emerge as the house's final boss and Ospreay's next opponent, but Will cut a promo encouraging Matthews to pursue singles glory and vowing to be in his corner if he asked. If it made you wonder about the House of Black's future, you weren't alone. It prompted Fightful Select to run a report about Malakai Black's AEW future. They did the same thing a couple of months back after Adam Cole's victory over Black, which followed a win over Matthews. Left fans wondering if that was Malakai's farewell to AEW or his in-ring career. Black's been rumored to want out of AEW for years, and talk of his dealing with limiting injuries have been around for at least that long, but he shot that down, saying he's, and I quote, "not injured, nor am I retiring, or am I leaving," end quote. Fightful's November report mentioned AEW sources who believe that Black's initial contract with the company will be up at the end of 2024 or early in 2025. Now, in the midst of more speculation as the result of the above Matthews and Ospreay scene being their match last night, Fightful's current report says their contacts at the company believe Black to be, and I quote, "finishing up with AEW if he hadn't already," end quote. The site cannot get clarity on whether Black's status will be addressed on screen beyond what we saw tonight, or I guess they mean last night. Brody King and Julia Hart, the other members of the House of Black, were not on tonight's Dynamite again last night. Neither has interacted with Black in weeks. Malakai's last AEW match was a tag title four-way with King, Brody King that is, at Full Gear. Independent promotion Coastal Championship Wrestling, or CCW, announced he's wrestling for them in Tampa this weekend, which it shows kind of a breaking news and him on the front of the actual thumbnail in itself from Coastal Championship Wrestling announcing that he's going to wrestle for them. And honestly, that's the end of the article, by the way. Again, link is down in the description box if you want to reread it, to yourself or whatever. I heard about this previously, though. I'm not going to pretend as if like this is something that's breaking. I didn't talk about it at the time, but I read a report, I think from Raj Giri, somewhere on Twitter. I want to say back in like September, maybe August, between August to October. Like, it was before Hell in a Cell. I remember that, I think. And they were already reporting that, they were getting closer and closer to Malakai Black wanting to leave the company. I think I made my Downfall series on Aleister Black after reading that report, or again, it was somewhere along that time range a couple of months ago. So it's not as if we're all surprised, or at least I'm not surprised. Not to mention, goddamn, Malakai's been preaching wanting to leave the company for how long now? He took that long hiatus that he questioned his whole career, that he tries to put off as it was a back injury. Leave it up to the wrestlers to always call you marks or you're being worked, when in reality, you might not know immediately. You might not know in the few couple of months, but trust me, once they get released, all the truths come to light, and it's almost always being the thing that was already talked about previously. He never had a back injury that severe. I'm pretty sure he had a messed up back, but never severe enough where he was taken off of TV that long. It was just creative issues. Aleister wanted to be used more, or Malakai, I guess. AEW had nothing for him. Shit happens. But I have a different approach when looking at something like this. You know what I mean? Because I know the first thing people are going to talk about is, oh, he should come back to WWE, especially now that Triple H is in charge. He was always pretty favored by Triple H back in the NXT days, which he was. I thought Aleister Black in 2018 was one of the best things that happened in NXT in general. His feud, in my opinion, one of my favorite feuds of the year, and quite possibly my favorite feud in NXT in general, was his work with Velveteen Dream. Very simplistic, no titles on the line, personal, got the story across very, very well. Velveteen Dream ended up losing the match, yet he got more out of the match, which still made Aleister look super duper strong when he acknowledged the Velveteen Dream. All that shit was fucking fantastic. His run when he was going after the World Championship initially, and how he lost it, and all the stuff that went on with Johnny Gargano when he was actually interesting, the stuff that was surrounding the whodunit stuff when he was attacked, the stuff that included Nikki Cross, and the I know your secret. All that shit was fantastic with Malakai Black. I digged his vibe when he would come off the entrance ramp and he was kind of like Nosferatu or a vampire when he's laying down on the bed and then the bed will lift him up. All that shit was fantastic. And unfortunately, promoters, bookers, they have a keen sense of how they want to book people that they like, right? Because I know, and I kind of do this to Tony Khan sometimes too, and I need to stop doing this because I don't think I would have the same inclination to want to talk about a guy like Vince McMahon, for an example, in a similar way. Even though he has ruined some of my favorite superstars, I got to really stop, constantly trying to say people are bad when it comes to their booking, when in reality, it's just a bias, not only on my perspective or my side, because people might like the things that I hate and vice versa, but the same thing can be said as far as how people typically book. Although I will never stop arguing that you should always try to, at the very least, book people favorably and let the audience make the decision in themselves. But obviously everybody's going to have their bias, and Vince McMahon was no different when booking Aleister Black, right? He was horrible at it. People say all they want to, Malakai wasn't just good enough, Malakai wasn't just good enough. He was really good, seriously. Go check out his AEW or his NXT stuff back in 2018, late 2017, going towards the latter portions of 2018. I thought Aleister Black was easily the best thing going on the entire program. He was very, 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 very wisely booked. Nothing that was accentuated as far as his microphone skills. Whether he had it or he didn't have it, it didn't matter because it wasn't the aesthetic of his actual gimmick. It was very Undertaker-esque as far as how they booked him, right? While at the same time, he had the in-ring prowess to go out there and do the stuff that you typically see nowadays in mainstream wrestling from an in-ring perspective. He had it all. I think he had the gimmick, he had the aesthetic, he had the actual pomp and circumstances that typically corroborates with people who lack charisma, but they make up for it because of the things that they do. The actual presentation in itself that can make up for the charisma, and even at times make up for the entire charisma to the extent that you just kind of makeshift charisma out of whole cloth, even though that person, he definitely would not be charismatic outside of the gimmick and stuff. Again, just like The Undertaker. Although Undertaker, as time went on, he eventually got charismatic even without the dead man gimmick. If you obviously go back and you see his American Badass stuff and Big Evil stuff. But when Undertaker first came into the business, not just the WCW stuff when he was Texas Red or Mean Mark Callis or anything like that, but even his early run as The Undertaker back in 1990, 1991, I would argue that Taker didn't really start getting charisma, at least when I started noticing, going back into Taker's. I've been watching Taker's career for over 30 years, but I mean, even going back and reading books and seeing old stuff before the internet became as prevalent as it was, even I noticed that Taker didn't really start getting legitimate charisma for real till around his arguably Yoko feud in 94, 95 is when Taker really started to build up charisma. And people can kind of attribute that to, constantly practicing, being in there with people who actually are charismatic, actual fucking stars over time. Eventually, you're going to want to be creative, innovative, try to get your shit over, and it's going to eventually, somehow, some way, make you a better performer. But I thought Aleister Black, for the most part, having to work with the talent that he had to work with, most notably, in my opinion, even though you don't want to give him credit because you have some things that you want to attribute to him because you don't like him in real life, your prerogative. Make no mistake about it, Velveteen Dream attributed to that also. Made him stand out a little bit more. Alistair helped put him on the map as far as making him being taken more seriously. But Velveteen Dream, I think, did a lot for Alistair Black also, as far as showing a side from a creative standpoint that had nothing to do with the aspect of the wrestling in itself. Made him more relatable, right? But this is all to say that if he wants to come back to WWE, I think you should welcome him with open arms. Especially given all the stuff that's currently going on right now, I think something like a Raw can absolutely use an Aleister Black. I think Aleister Black going out there, taking out Karrion Kross, and pretty much using his group as his own family, and turning Karrion Kross face or whatever, and maybe even eventually feuding with the Wyatt Six or something like that, I think could be very, very interesting. See, make no mistake about it, the stuff that Aleister Black was doing when he initially came into AEW, I thought was actually pretty decent. You know, the stuff that he was working with Cody Rhodes and the Misting and all that crazy shit, I thought that was actually pretty damn good. You know what I mean? And as time went on, because it's AEW, and obviously their focus as far as how they care about wrestling versus characters and story is going to be a hell of a lot different compared to WWE. Not to say that they're perfect at it, but as I said previously, last night I believe, they're better at it than AEW at the moment. Or at least we can reference WWE in the past life. We can reference WWE about 10 to 20 years ago, right? As far as their storytelling aspect is considered, right? How they're actually favorable as far as how they carry on their stories versus today's professional wrestling, including compare them to themselves. I thought Aleister Black and Cody Rhodes, they had something. I thought when Aleister Black first came on, you know, yeah, obviously it was just a ratings ploy. It was just a viewership ploy to get people to want to tune into the show because you just got your hands on another WWE guy. And obviously as time started to go on, even after the Cody Rhodes stuff, you know, they didn't really sink their teeth into what Aleister could have actually done. You know, he did team up with Buddy Murphy, another WWE guy. Brody King came out of nowhere. You know, they started to feud a little bit with, I forgot the guy's name, but the dude that used to team up with Brian Pillman Jr., you know, him and the other guy and Julia Hart at the time, you know, they were a whole little trio, and Julia was doing this whole little cheerleader gimmick or whatever, and they brought Julia Hart into the mix. And although I'm getting sick and tired of the women dark gimmick stuff, you know, at least it worked for her, and she's still currently using that same gimmick to this very day. But it's to say that you had something in Aleister that I feel like we only got a taste of. I feel like what you had in Aleister, as far as what you could have gotten out of that gimmick, especially after seeing his run in 2018, I can't stress this enough. You got to watch that stuff. That's some of the most compelling wrestling. The NXT arc over the summer, fall, maybe early winter season of 2018 was very, very compelling stuff. Very, very compelling. Making the most of the little things, right? That's when NXT is still very good right now, but I mean, like, you know, NXT in 2018, man, that was some fucking fantastic television in my opinion, at least. You know, you could have tapped into all of that, and you know, it is what it is. Aleister was not used to what I at least believe to be the fullest extent of his capabilities, and you had, you know, your eyes on other people that you wanted to get over. Because like I said, when it comes to Tony, and I'm gonna stop picking on him, I promise you I'm gonna stop picking on him, but I have to make it at least it's noteworthy. You gotta at least bring up the fact that clearly he has a preference for the things that he likes in professional wrestling, and unfortunately his preference tends to be a little bit on the less viable side, in the sense that the things that he likes isn't stereotypical as far as what the casual fan, what most people outside of his niche group likes. There's a reason why his group is niche. There's a reason why the group or the atmosphere or the area that he comes from was only in the inception of the internet back in the mid 90s. There's a reason why they were there, you know what I mean? Because now that they've gotten bigger, more vocal, that whole thing that now makes up the majority of the IWC, and now the IWC is so influential on most of the promoters, most of the higher ups, not to mention the people and the producers who are now doing the match structures, typically are coming from a bunch of guys who were on the indie circuit, say circa 2005, a bunch of old cruiserweights from WCW, a bunch of cruiserweights from WWE or the light heavyweights, for an example. You know, you have this recipe, and with Aleister Black, it takes away from the aesthetic of the story that he's trying to put across, right? And it's not even like a Bray Wyatt situation where like he's probably as creative as a Bray Wyatt, but with all due respect to a Bray Wyatt, Aleister Black can actually go in the ring. Again, not to say that Bray was a bad wrestler, but if you're trying to keep it consistent with how people see professional wrestling nowadays, Aleister Black is very, very good in the ring, right? Very, very good. So it coincides with all of that. And not to mention, the only good thing about professional wrestling nowadays is because you have so many Ricochets and so many Will Ospreys and all those guys who do all those flips and stuff like that. It doesn't typically make it a bad thing for a heel to now flip and do all the fancy stuff that you would stereotypically see with a babyface. One of the things I used to hate the most back in the days when I started to become a little bit more smarky was seeing heels flip and dive and do all this crazy shit, because it's like, dude, you're a heel. Like, the things that you're doing right now, that's not heel-like, you know what I mean? That was one of my biggest pinpoints when I seen Shawn Michaels and Hulk Hogan when they had a feud back in 2005. It wasn't just the fact that it was going to be impossible for me to want to cheer Hogan over Shawn Michaels because I like Shawn more than Hogan, but also it's Shawn Michaels, all the daring stuff, all the crazy stuff. It's the reason why I never took RVD seriously as a heel. It's the reason why Rey Mysterio never really came on my radar as far as someone who I wanted to see turn heel. It's why I looked at it very, very weird when a Jeff Hardy was a heel, for real, not the fucking Brood shit, but a legitimate fucking heel in 2010 and TNA. That whole aesthetic is pretty much gone for it because everybody does so many flips and stuff. It's now become the norm and it's not as bad. So even if you have an Aleister Black who can go out there and do the fucking kicks and flips and all that other kind of shit, it's like it doesn't really stand out anymore. So you can still do that stuff. The matches can still be exciting, but he can still be a heel as long as you have a solid baby face. And that's all to say, overall, has AEW failed in Aleister Black? Yes. Do I feel like him going? I'm not going to be one of those people, Aleister Black, he left WWE and he had to go over to AEW and now he knows that, the grass is greener where you come from. No. At the end of the day, he did the right thing, okay? You had Vince McMahon who was booking you. He wasn't giving you anything to fuck with. You seen AEW and you thought to yourself, hey, they fit more of my style currently at the moment. Maybe I can go over there and do something. He went over there. He failed. He's coming back. And it's not even so much he failed, they didn't book him, right? Just like Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon did the exact same thing Tony Khan did. Although you can argue Tony did him a hell of a lot dirtier than Vince, which is ironic because, again, Aleister's style fits more of that AEW stuff than what Vince was booking, period, and even at that time when he left initially. Yes, I want him to come back. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Aleister Black. I'm a big fan of Malakai Black. And with Triple H being in charge, I would like to think that his work, as far as what he did in AEW in 2018 and being one of Triple H's favorites, I would like to think that if he were to come back to WWE, he's got to be 40 right now. If not 40, he's pushing 40. I think he's more wiser. I think he can still pull off the cool matches. He did it with Edge. I think with Aleister Black, there's a lot more to be given and a lot more you can get out of him. But obviously, that's just my opinion. I'm going to leave it up to you guys in the comment section and you tell me how you feel. Do you care to see Aleister Black, Malakai Black back in WWE? Maybe doing some stuff with the Final Testament. Maybe doing some stuff with, for an example, the Wyatt Six. If for nothing else, like I said, out of everybody in that group, with all due respect to everybody and all the participants, he's the only one who can kind of still do the AEW style bullshit. Maybe you want him to come back, and if he's still rocking the whole eye gimmick, he wants to get revenge on Rey Mysterio even, right? Considering he stuck his neck out for Rey Mysterio with all the eye stuff, and he suffered for it, so it's not like you can't bring him into the fold there. Hell, Seth Rollins, he's the reason why his eyes even fucked up to begin with. He can easily go after a Seth Rollins if he really wants to. If he wants to go after Cody Rhodes because of the old history that they had in AEW, eventually you can make... you could pay Rose to go towards that direction. There's a bunch of feuds he can sink his teeth into, and I think with the uniqueness of his gimmick, he'd pull it off very, very well. Not to mention, who knows? Maybe you'd like to do stuff with, I don't know, Zelina Vega, who's his wife in real life. Who knows? You never know. Maybe you can make her a heel, turn her dark, and then do some stuff with her in order to collaborate with Aleister Black. You never know. All I'm stating is, I think there's a bunch of things that he can do coming into WWE that they didn't take advantage of in AEW, and that they didn't take advantage of initially in WWE when he was first there on the main roster. And like I said, if you go back and watch his old stuff in NXT, I think, this is just my personal opinion, obviously if your taste is a little bit different, especially if you don't care about the dark or the magic or any of that stuff, obviously your taste is going to be a little bit different. But if you don't care and you really want to see that kind of stuff, or you just care about storytelling in general, in my opinion, I think you should at least give his stuff just again, a little bit more open-minded, give his stuff a watch in 2018, 2017 NXT, and then come back to me and talk to me, and you tell me if you don't see something in that gimmick that can at least be taken and molded and, you know, see how it prevails in the main roster nowadays. But as always, my name is Devontae, and I'm gonna get the hell up out of here. Let me know your thoughts, comments, you already know the routine. The deuces, and a P. Ice.